Today, we're talking with Jessica Aptman of ZocDoc. Thank you so much for joining us, Jessica.
Sure, happy to be here. So many people were helpful to me while I was learning about PR, so happy to return the favor, or at least try to.
Well, that's great. Jessica, now you've worked in several PR capacities, beginning in a boutique agency in New York City as an account coordinator handling premium beverages. Next, you joined a mid-sized firm focusing on luxury lifestyle brands. This led you to join Outcast Agency, directing media strategy for leading technology clients. And now you direct internal and external communications at ZocDoc, a leader in digital health communication. So you're in a much different space than from where you started. This leads me to two questions. First, what does this say about opportunities in digital PR? And second, what was the biggest shift you experienced in moving from an agency to an in-house role?
Sure. So my path is something that gives my friends and family such great amusement. When I started out, I had, represented Stoli and Glenlivet and Chivas and was taking press trips to Europe to bring journalists to distilleries. And today I work in healthcare. And so it is a bit of a shift. And what I think is most interesting is that for me about PR, you can represent what interests you most. And so if you're passionate about sports or politics or the arts or retail or nonprofits, there is an opportunity to tell great stories. And so I think the industry in general has moved away, at least from what I've seen, from being specialized focused. I think in the past it was really you are a healthcare focused PR person, or you are a consumer packaged goods focused PR person. And there certainly still are people who have a specialty, and that's fantastic. But I think there's a lot more flexibility these days to be a great generalist and be a great communicator for any brand or client. And when I look to hire, I prefer generalists who know how to pick out business stories or pick out user stories or pick out digital and technology stories. And it really is, you hear me using the word stories a lot, it really is about telling stories that resonate with different audiences. And so it is a little bit of a funny path, having started in booze and moved to luxury lifestyle, and I lucked into tech. And that is where I really felt most at home, and that sparked my interest. And it sort of came along right as technology was becoming much more of a front and center story in mainstream media. And so that was a little bit about my path. To answer your second question, I think, which is around the shift from moving from an agency to an in-house role. When I was at an agency, and I recommend everyone at some point have an experience with an agency, it is fantastic boot camp because you get to do the same thing so many times. You get to launch something once a month, or you get to pitch out a story once a day. And so your expertise in doing the same thing over and over and over and sharpening your craft, it's a really valuable experience. I always wanted to do a great job for my clients. I worked really hard. I felt great ownership over the brands and the companies and the products that I represented. But the biggest shift for me is really the level of accountability that I feel sitting in an in-house communications team where, at an agency, you make recommendations to your clients. You say, this is the strategy we recommend. Here's why we think so, and ultimately it's up to someone else to decide whether or not to implement your strategy, and it's kind of out of your hands after you've done the diligence and the recommending. There is no one to turn to here except for myself and my team when a strategy that we've implemented goes well or goes poorly. And so the level of accountability and the decision-making ability to have an impact, hopefully a good impact, but things go awry, sits on you. And I feel like this is my company, and I not only own the communications function here, but I own the brand, and I own the business, and I'm responsible for its growth. And that's why I'm up at 2:30 in the morning with a notepad next to my bed taking notes, not just on communications, but on product ideas or how we can make the sales process better. So I think that shift in ownership and accountability is something I love and has really motivated me and kept me going. And I think there's great things to be learned in both scenarios, but it's more about building a business in partnership with other teams versus just doing communications in isolation at an agency.
I loved hearing that because it brought me back to my professional career. I worked mostly in-house in corporate communications for magazines, national magazines, and I certainly felt such strong identity with the brand.
Yeah.
That was just so fulfilling. I know. Also, you remind me that we often caution or advise public relations majors to minor in business. And I can
Absolutely.
see now that is good advice.
Absolutely.
Well, see, now you've mentioned some very established brands, and as well as startups that you've worked with, trying to make a name for themselves. So what are the similarities and differences between working with the two?
Yeah, I think execution-wise, you're doing a lot of the same things. You're packaging news, you're finding things that are relevant and timely and interesting to reporters. The difference, I think, is when you're a startup and you don't have decades of brand building behind you, it really is about establishing credibility. And so how can you show that this is a credible business, that this is a viable business, that this has momentum? And it could be things as simple as signing up a client with a great name, to say, hey, look, this person has partnered with us, which shows that they believe in what we're doing and what we're building here. It's showing milestones and growth. So those big round numbers hitting X million users or downloads or sales really help fuel the story of the startup taking momentum and being more than just a flash in the pan. And I think it's also using your partners, whether they're your investors or clients or the people who are using your service, to bring the story to life, to show the value that it's delivering, whether for us it's to patients or doctors, if you're an enterprise business, if it's to the clients who are buying your service, if you're a politician, it's to your constituents. And so who are the people whose lives this is impacting, and how can you use them to tell your story? It's really funny these days. We see a lot of big established companies wanting to act more like startups and looking to tell their innovation story. And I can't tell you how many, Fortune 500 companies have reached out and say, hey, gosh, do you know anyone from the tech field who'd be interested in coming in-house and telling our innovation story? And it's kind of the cool thing to do now. But I think it's all about reporting on your own business and finding those nuggets that demonstrate why this is a viable, trustworthy, whatever it is important to your business, that's true. And in terms of metrics, I think the biggest difference is when you're at a big company, typically there are lots of people moving the business forward, big marketing departments, big budgets, a whole content engine, a whole sales engine. Sometimes at startups, you are all of those things. You're the content engine, you're the sales engine, you're all of it. And so when you do something that is great for the business, you really see the impact. And you know it was because of you. At a big company, you think, hey, maybe that story I placed or this campaign I did helped contribute. But when there's nothing else contributing at a startup, you know that that one broadcast morning show you placed led to an increase in visits to your site or downloads or conversions by 200% over the next 12 hours. And nothing else happened that day. You can really see the impact of your work, which is something that I've loved about startups.
Well, you've really touched on so much that I can personally relate to, and I know it's very valuable for our students, but you also just touched on the importance of measurement, which we're going to get to a little bit, not you and I, but
Yeah.
in our course, very important measurement.
Yeah.
Now, can you talk a little bit more about branding? Now, we tend to think of branding as a marketing task to establish an image, and we associate PR with building relationships. So how does branding fit with the PR practice? How does PR support brand identity?
I think it's different at every company how much of a role PR plays in that story, but no matter where you go, it always plays a role. And to me, a brand is about a mission, it is about a shared set of values, it's about standing for something. And PR's main story there is to make sure that the communities you're engaging in, for us, that's external people like patients, doctors, investors, clients, and our internal community, which is our ZocDockers here, we're nearly 700 people, all feel the same way about the brand. And the brand is the brand no matter who you're talking to, no matter the story, you are one brand, and you can't be different to different people. And so here, comms really leads that. And positioning the brand, so to us that is, who are we, what's our mission, how do we describe ourselves, and how do we behave as a company through our product, what are the attributes, if this was a person that come forward, when anyone interacts with our brand, from our sales team to our customer service team to the mobile app, it should all feel the same. And luckily here, comms has a really big role in establishing that. But it is about putting forward the messages and the stories that support who this company is and what this company stands for, and bringing that to life. Because, you know, a mission statement on a wall or a set of core values is fine, but you have to consistently behave in accordance with those things in order to give a brand life, and making sure it's consistent at every touch point and being a good steward of the brand. And so I think comms and PR always has a role there, certainly most traditionally through the stories that you pitch. What are we trying to get the message out about? What is important about this story? How is this supporting the vision of the company or the vision of who we are as a brand? And making sure that's all aligned and consistent and on the same page with everything else the company is doing.
Oh, Jessica, that's invaluable advice. I can highly relate to that as well. One of my previous positions was teaching magazine development at Medill School of Journalism, and even there we required students to create a persona for the magazine and a persona for the ideal reader. Yeah, and I can see
think
that.
Just to add, communications role too is making sure everyone is singing from the same songbook. So especially in big companies where you've got thousands of people, or even in the company of 10 people, does everyone know what the brand is and what the brand stands for? Because if they don't know what true north is, they can't behave in accordance with that. And so I think this is particularly true for us from an internal communications perspective, in making sure that everybody knows who we are, what we stand for, what our mission is, how we're expected to behave and support that.
Great, great. Now let me move on to something that's a little more immediate, perhaps, for some of people in the audience, and that's our students come from a wide range of career fields and levels of experience in public relations. Now, for those just entering the field or those wanting to advance, what particular advice might you have for them?
There is nothing like practical experience, and I think continued learning in an educational setting like this one is invaluable. But there are some things you just can't learn without doing, and doing a lot. And so whether it's pro bono work or helping a small business through a friend or a family, just get out there and start to sharpen your craft, and make some mistakes and learn from them what you could have done better. I think it's really important to always ask yourself what went well, what didn't go well, and then how can you use those learnings to get better for the future. I'd say also reach out to people. The community is pretty small, and from what I found, really helpful. So if someone has a job or a role that you think is your dream job or your dream role, reach out to them. I think 9 times out of 10, people are really willing to chat and to help. And hearing about others' experiences, what they learned, what their path was, what they thought was a valuable experience, what they thought wasn't such valuable experience, can really help form your own hypothesis on how you want to grow yourself in your career. And I'd also say try a bunch of different things. I mean, I certainly have, and I've really found here in technology, and especially at ZocDoc, what I consider to be my home. But it's not where I started, and so I think it's okay to evaluate where you are and say, is this really fueling my interest? Is this aligned with my passion? Is this smart? Is this challenging in the right ways? And whatever criteria is important to you, be purposeful about it and ask yourself, what do I want to achieve, and is this serving my own mission and my own purpose? And if not, that's okay. Take your skills, and like we talked about, I started in booze and ended up in healthcare. It's not too late to try something new or pivot into something different and take what you know and then learn the rest.
Excellent, excellent. One of the things that we do in this program is work with a lot of course, we do work with some clients. We work with hypothetically also with clients, but we do a lot of case study. And in my courses, I always require the students to reach out and interview stakeholders involved with those cases to get a little more in depth, to probe a little bit more. And I think that's one way to test their level of engagement and their interest, or critical abilities in that area. Okay, so now for my last question, and I'm sorry it's coming to an end, but all good things must, right? Jessica, drawing from your breadth of experience and current frontline experience in a fast-growing company, what are the most important skills, both hard and soft, for a communications PR pro?
Sure. I'll answer that sort of all in one, but I think I look when I'm hiring for curiosity about the world. People who are really engaged and connected with the world around them, understand the news cycles, understand the stories that are making headlines, why they're making headlines, and just a citizen of the world. I think that makes you a better communicator. That comes closely with being a voracious news junkie. And so every morning I watch the morning shows, I listen to the radio, I am on my Twitter feed reading all of the stories of the day before I even get into work. So what's happening out there, what's in the news cycle, how does my brand or my client or my business fit into it, or does it not? Is this a really bad week to pitch anything because everyone is going to be consumed with something over here? So I think having that sensibility about what's happening in the world is really important. I think the journalistic sense too, having a nose for news and being really honest about whether this is just drinking the Kool-Aid or is this interesting to anybody outside of our four walls. Knowing what makes for a good and compelling story to people to catch them and capture their attention is really important. There are too many pitches that journalists get that are not well researched, are not interesting. There's no upshot, there's no news, and you're just wasting people's time. And so what is newsworthy is a really important skill to hone and develop. And being a strong writer. A sharp headline with a concise and clear and compelling pitch goes a really long way, and that's true for emailing with internal business partners or external partners, being a strong writer. On the soft skills side, I'd say, having an adaptability and flexibility. This is probably particularly true working at a startup, maybe not so much at a bigger company that has a more measured pace, but really just picking yourself up every day and saying what's happening today, how can I maximize it, what's the right thing to be doing today is crucial. And I'd say I really encourage communication people to be business people. The function of PR and communications is to drive the business. And if what you are doing is not driving the business, then you're probably not doing the right thing. And it's not about activities, it's about outcomes. And so if you're pitching 50 stories a day but getting nowhere, you're not driving the business. You're putting in a lot of effort, but you're not getting a lot of outcomes. And so I think it's always making sure that you are measuring, which you will continue to talk about, how your work is impacting the business for good. And so understanding that communications itself is not the end goal, it is a means to an end, which is to move the business along, is really important. And approaching all of your conversations, demonstrating that understanding that you are a good business partner and not just a PR person, really earns you a seat at the table and a right to weigh in on big decisions that have nothing to do with PR, that have to do on building a business. And so I would really challenge yourself on whether or not what you are doing is accomplishing the goals of the business, because at the end of the day, that's what we are trying to do as communications professionals, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. Well, I think your opinion is very valuable, so we really thank you. We thank you so much for the conversation today. Your advice, your insights will really be taken to heart, I can assure you. Thank you very much, Jessica.
Thank you for having me. Good luck, everyone. Take care.